our tips to live the best experience with the digital world. Did you know that you can significantly drop your data consumption when playing your videos? Yes, this is possible by optimizing the resolution of your videos. Launch YouTube. Launch a video. Go to the three small dots on the top right of your screen. Click on Quality. Choose the 240p or 360p format. On Netflix. Launch Netflix. Go to the three small lines at the bottom right of the screen. Click on Settings. Choose Video Quality. Select Standard Quality. We can do incredible things with our smartphone, like optimizing the quality of videos to save data.
Orange.
Welcome to Salamatu and Friends, Women in Business and Leadership. Today's discussion is focused more on the women's agenda, and the women's agenda basically in politics. Now, we know women's political participation is a fundamental prerequisite for gender equality and genuine democracy. In January of 2019, globally, women held just 24.3% of all parliamentary seats and 20% of ministerial positions. That's a very low number. Although women's political participation and representation has increased in recent years, progress seems to be very slow. The unequal representation of women in decision-making bodies is an obstacle to achieving gender equality in society and fulfilling one of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 targets. So with that said, I just want to give you a little bit background about Liberia's census. There was a census done in 2008, which placed women at 49.5% of the total population. Our population here in Liberia is about 4 million people. And the National Elections Commission confirmed that women made up about 49% of the registered voters. So that's nearly half of the registered voters. However, within our legislature, the House of Representatives have 73 seats. And I hope you're kind of keeping track of the numbers that I'm reading to you. The House of Representatives have 73 seats. The Senate has 30 seats. And the Senate term is 9 years. The House of Representatives is 6 years. So out of the 73 seats in the House of Representatives, you have 9 women. And unfortunately, we lost one of our representatives last week, a young woman, Muna Pelham, young blood. Probably, I think Muna was the youngest representative elected, the youngest female representative elected. And this young lady has, her track record is long, and she accomplished so much in her young life. So now we're down from 9 women out of 73 seats to 8 women out of 73 seats. And in the Senate, we have 30 seats, and you guessed it, we have 1 female representation, 1 senator out of 30 seats. So we know that number is not a well represented. It's women just isn't, we're not represented in the House of Representatives. And we're definitely not represented in the House of Senate. Now, throughout the years, the discussion has been focused around identifying the barriers, the challenges, deterring women from even entering politics. And the reason I decided to shift the discussion to something else is because it seemed as if we've talked so much about the barriers and we've identified these challenges, but we're not moving ahead and moving beyond it and addressing the challenges. So given that we now have a potential for a political shift within our senatorial elections, 15 seats are now up for grabs in December of this year, we need to really shift the focus to mobilizing more support for the women to get involved in politics. And three core areas that we want to focus on is, of course, recruiting, identifying strong candidates and supporting their campaign, as well as conducting research and data, and also voters education. So today's conversation is pretty much focused on, okay, when you identify the strong women, or you identify someone who you believe is a strong candidate, why should I provide support for her? Why should I campaign for her? Why should I vote for her? Do we have a common platform as women that we can say, regardless of party affiliation, I can support this woman because we have a common platform that we believe if we have more women in there pushing that agenda, it would advance more women and girls. So with that in mind, I want to welcome Simi Olusola. Simi is actually my Acumen fellow. But Simi is also an expert in policy programs, governance, entrepreneurship, technology for young people. But before that, I'm gonna give Simi a chance to talk about herself in a little bit. And we also have with us Maureen Sieh. And Maureen Sieh is a Liberian woman. She's actually a veteran journalist, an international media development and communication specialist. So Simi is our Nigerian sister. So we will go over to Simi to just kind of tell us a little bit, maybe in about a minute, a little bit about your work. Okay, 2 minutes, because I know you do great things in Nigeria. So maybe 2 minutes, if you can just tell us a little bit about your work and what you do.
Okay, it's great to be here. I'm excited about the conversation. Well, anything politics and women always excites me here. So I run two organizations. So I founded and run a not-for-profit, and we work with young people all in a bid to reduce to eliminate poverty in Nigeria and hopefully Africa. So we work in two areas. We work to do two things. One, we work to put money in there, to put the tools they can use to get money in their hands. So we do a lot of capacity building in technology, and then we do entrepreneur support for micro enterprises. And on the other hand, we work to build a better system. We want to have a better system. We want to have our government be accountable and responsive. So to do that, we work with citizens to increase their participation in governance, because we believe that the power of the people is truly greater than the people in power. But that the problem is that most people do not even know they have that power, and they don't know how to use them. How do you even use what you don't know how to have? So that's what we are working on, trying to change that for citizens. And on the other hand, I also run a consulting company where I do a lot of work in the startup space, also with technology, business advisory. And as relevant to this conversation, I am a politician, pretty new at it. I mean, I'm not a veteran politician. I think it's going on 2 years now. But wow, for me, the journey in politics has been so far. It's been eye-opening. In just a short time out there, I've had to deal with a myriad of situations, and I'm just really excited about working to bring more women into politics. I've seen the way the odds are stacked against us. I know. So I guess I should just stop here before I start running into. I can start running and going into all this. I know that when we were going to get to that in the conversation. But yeah, so I'm doing a lot of work right now in my political party. I'm a member of a major party in Nigeria, the opposition party. Actually, I joined while it was an opposition party, and I'm working to revive or to revamp what our communications there is like. Our parties don't talk to the people. Our politicians and leaders do not engage with the people. They talk at them, or just they just disregard us. So I'm trying to change that, and it's, of course, you can imagine that it's been an uphill battle, because we're absolutely changing what everyone in the party system has been doing since forever. So that's where I am at now.
A task. Thank you, Simi. Okay, so we'll go to Maureen, our veteran journalist, to just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. As you rightfully said, I spent most of my career in daily journalism, starting in Liberia at the Daily Observer. And most people know me as the female warrior who was the first journalist to cover the Civil War. I went to the battlefield with Elizabeth Blunt. At the time, she was the West Africa correspondent for the BBC. And I just got the bug of covering the war. And I traveled to Nimba and neighboring Ivory Coast and Guinea, where there were thousands of Liberians who had fled the conflict in Liberia. And then it was some trying times. But in the course of that, I had gotten a Fulbright fellowship to go and do my master's in journalism in the States. So I left in 1990 and I went to Indiana University where I I got my master's in journalism. And the war was still going on, so I just continued my career in America. And I spent a lot of my career at the Post Standard in Syracuse, New York, where I cover everything from urban communities, refugee, immigration, education, and then I also served as an editor. And then I had a blog on urban communities. And I took a break from daily journalism in 2009 to join the Peace Corps. And I worked in Morocco, which I absolutely loved. And I created a citizen journalism program for young people. And we started this Facebook page and online newspaper called Wars is at EDUs that continued today. When did I left Morocco in 2013, and the kids are still running it. I'm still in touch with a lot of them. And it's really good. I think in a couple of years ago, I went to New York, and the organization that funded, because I started that project with a $500 grant from World Connect in New York. And that grant went from $500 to like about $3,000. I think over the span of my tenure there was like, we got up to like $5,000. And it was just like little seed money, but it did a lot. It inspired a generation of young people who were trying to find their voice. And at the time it was around the Arab Spring, and Morocco, didn't have the kind of experience that we had in Tunisia and Egypt and Yemen and other places, but people started to rise up and started to question the government. And fortunately for the Moroccan government, they were like, we don't want a Yemen in Morocco, so we are going to respond to what people are concerned about. And so that was a lot of fun. So the kids were invited to New York at a fundraiser for World Connect, and two of the kids came and shared their stories. I should say young adults now, but they were teenagers when I started working with them. And it was just amazing. I did a lot of work with women empowerment. And then I came to Liberia. I got a job doing international media development with IREX. I came in 2013, and I've been here since. I've worked with a number of international organizations, doing everything from communications and media development to working on women empowerment. So I think I've worked on every media development project in Liberia. I also work with UN Women, which I spend a lot of time doing a lot of work on women in politics. So right now I work for USAID Liberia Accountability Voice Initiative and also Read Liberia. And I think that's it in a nutshell, but I'm glad to participate in this. I think I love talking about women in politics. If you follow me at Facebook, you'll sense my frustration.
Yes.
That we are just not catching on. We're just not recognizing that the lack of women in politics, it is a national emergency. You can't have 50%, nearly women making up 50% of the population, and you only have 8 of them in the House of Representatives, and you only have 1 in the House. And with the elections coming up in December, I don't see a long line of women in the mix. And so we do have a problem. We think we're in the middle of a health pandemic, but I think we're in the middle of a fight for the future of this country.
Yeah. And I think one of my frustration also is the fact that we had an elected female leader. And because we had an elected female leader, everybody, expected all of our issues to go away. She was a token for, okay, we have given you guys the opportunity to rule. If you didn't resolve the legislature issue, then leave us alone. And I was literally having a discussion with someone maybe about 2 hours ago, the same thing. And that's the attitude, I think, of most of the men here. But to kind of shift to the conversation, do we need an agenda as women? Because, somebody would say, well, the men don't have an agenda. Do women need an agenda to begin with? Do we need a common agenda to begin with? I will shoot this to either you or Simi.
To be clear, so when you say agenda, like a call to rally around, or what exactly do we mean by agenda?
Okay. The agenda comes from the fact that Liberia is a country that we don't have women representation in the legislature. We want to get there. But there's question around, who do I support? I don't want to support somebody outside of my party. I don't want to support a token. There are some people who are saying, we don't just want to take a woman because she's a female and throw her there just to even out the numbers. So then the question becomes, what would be that invisible line that we can say, you know what, regardless of my party, I'm going to support this woman because we all identify with these issues. And then I will go through the survey that we did. Do we need that specific agenda, or do we need to just say, hey, look, you're a woman, we're going to chunk you in there, whether you fight for my issues or not? And that's what the common agenda is. What are those issues that we feel if we were to support another woman that she will push for us to make it better for us?
Okay, so for me, the answer to that will be yes and no. And so first, I keep saying, one thing I always say, tokenism is annoying. Yeah, I'm like, don't give me this because I'm a woman, give me because I worked for it. You can see that I have a stellar profile. But at the same time, I realized that sometimes we might have no choice but to accept tokenism. And then from there, once we get that platform even if it's based on tokenism, now it's up to whoever got that to use that to keep fighting and expand the platform and get more people on board. So there's that. So there's a part of tokenism is annoying. It's like a slap on the face. I'm trying to find the words. Because it's like you're telling me you're nothing, but will help you. But I just have to admit that sometimes or that we can take advantage of it. So I'm saying, I think, that's when we can take advantage of tokenism to further what we want to do and get more women involved. So that's one. Then with the agenda, it's good to have an agenda. It's like the right thing to do. And so yes, we should have an agenda, but that's not the only thing. It's nice to have an agenda to rally around. You support these issues. Yeah. So yes, have that. The other side to that is, I keep saying that we need to just have a critical mass of women in politics for starters. And that means we have to have all kinds of women, strong women, women we think are weak, women, and the exposed women, the intelligent women, the rich women, the poor women. We need to have all them, because if you look at how politics right now, there are all sorts of men in there. They're the men that are utterly, and you wonder, like, what exactly do you have to offer? But the thing is, numbers count. So it's a game of numbers. And when it comes to just a pure game of numbers, you don't want to start focusing all at that point on, oh, you need to be strong, you need to have this. There's the part that calls for, let's just bring everybody on board. Everyone, whoever you are, just come on board. There's a part that is needed for that. And then there's now that part of eventually. And so, okay, let me backtrack. So that's part of bringing in numbers, usually at the grassroots. And because it's important to have like a huge base, that critical mass at the grassroots that can speak and just push whatever agenda it is that we're trying to push. Yeah. And then there's now the part that comes for the agenda, and that's where we rally round. And unfortunately, the way it is, that is where the extreme scrutiny comes in, and where we have to ensure that it's a woman that passes all the tests. Whatever you can throw at her, she can pass it. It's sad. I mean, the standards set for women are way, way higher than the standards that set for men. Men are forgiven. I mean, men are supposed to be angels, so a man would do something nasty and he's a man. But a woman can't do the same thing because we're supposed to be mothers and angels and all of that. So I think for me, it's those three things. Tokenism is annoying, but we can take advantage of it. There's a point where we need a critical mass of people where it's just a pure game of numbers, and we just bring everybody on board, whether you have anything to offer in quotes, or whether you truly have something big to offer to us. And there's not the point of the agenda where those that we push up from that critical mass of people that we formed, that we push about those that truly will pass anything that anyone throws at them. So it's not just about the agenda. For me, it cuts across these three things. Those are my thoughts on that.
Okay, so Maureen.
Yeah, I do believe that we need an agenda. And what are those things that concern women? Equal pay for equal work, SGBV, our children, making sure that they have access, our children and ourselves, making sure that we have access to healthcare, adequate healthcare, making sure that we are represented in all areas of government. But the problem we have is, how do we articulate our agenda? Do we have one organization because we have a lot of different women's groups, but is there an umbrella organization that will help to drive that agenda? That will engage women on that agenda? And how often are we talking, other than when some UN or USAID sponsors something?
Yeah.
Are we meeting regularly to even take stock of where we are? Because the problem is, we only talk about the fact that we have that one woman in the legislature. We now have, in the Senate, we now have 8 in the House of Representatives. We talk about it in these kinds of forums. But what about keeping track of it and saying, okay, this is where we are, and this is where we need to be, and how do we get there? Like right now we're seeing, we're hearing about the increase in violence against women during the COVID lockdown. Where is that critical mass of women voices trying to address that? We're getting ready to go to election in December. Yombly is running. She's trying to keep her seat. In Bond County, I know Dorothy Tomei is in the race. And in NIMBA, I know that Gongolo is also in the race. But where are the other women? I mean, I don't hear. Maybe they're there, but if you cannot be seen, then you don't exist. Because I remember I posted something raising this on my Facebook page, and I know Dorothy had told me that she was running, but I never saw anything. And once I raised that, where is she? Then she came out of out of hiding and said, "Oh, I'm still running." Well, if you're still running, I keep hearing about Henry Yala, Prince Moy in Ball County. I'm like, where is this woman? And she's really good. I mean, she is somebody that people should rally around. And
But,
how are we? Go ahead.
do you think it's because, I mean, because we haven't really been playing in this good old boys network? We have the guys, they come up and like Sima said, you turn around, there's every human being on the male gender who's running for office. And all of us, looking at the history of our legislature in Liberia, looking at their track record, we're not even able to pinpoint a great achievement for most of them, for at least 90%. But for women, it almost seems as if, you have one woman there. We hold the women to a much higher standard once they get there. Tima was saying, let's just get women, let's just trump in there. Let's get plenty of women, let's flood them in there, and then work to, I guess, build them, right?
Yeah, and this is the problem I have with people in Madam Sterling's legacy. Throughout Liberia's history, men have dominated this country. They were the ones who started the war, and it wasn't for the women, the war was going to be continuing. So please stop downplaying women's role in this country.
Yeah.
Please. Madam Sirleaf, remember what Liberia was like before Madam Sirleaf took over? It was a country that had been destroyed by the war. No running water, no electricity, so many things were missing, no sense of governance, who knew where, I mean, all the natural resources have been mismanaged, So think about where she took Liberia from. She wasn't perfect. And you can't expect her, if you're saying that it was her, she alone was supposed to end SGBV, then you're basically telling our sons and daughters that you have no role to play in it. It's only the women's problem. We're telling our sons, our husbands, our boyfriends, our brothers, we're saying, this is not your fight. Leave it alone. And it's a complicated thing to expect one person to have addressed an entire issue that has been plaguing, that from J.J. Roberts' time, in people's homes, men were molesting the girls in their homes. They were raping them. They were taking advantage of them. So you really wanted her, in 10 years or 12 years, you really wanted her to address all the stuff that you've been doing in your homes. So it's not enough for you to tell your brother who sleeps with all the little girls that he passes around with, who sell grumpy on the street. You can't tell your brother to stop, but you want this one woman who the president to go and start telling you now, you'll stop sleeping with the little girls, the grumpy sellers you'll pick up on the street.
Maureen, let me play the devil's advocate. And I think that's why it's so important for women to rally behind other women. Because if we're saying all of this, why didn't the men or most men do X, Y, Z? Why aren't we rallying behind our sisters, our mothers, and pushing them into that space? I want to go over the survey. We have 30 persons complete the survey. And we literally looked at issues that we felt globally that women, that were issues pertaining specifically to women and girls. So they were general issues. The number one topic, the number one issue on there was access to education. And I also redid it and I sent it to a couple of my male friends. education was not their priority on there. You understand where I'm going? So for most women who did the survey, education, access to education for women and girls was extremely important. The second thing, the number 2 thing that came on the list was economic justice, equal wages and safe and secure workplaces. And then the third thing was rape violence, sexual violence and rape. And then we had gender equality, we had FGM, child marriages, entrepreneur, maternal, sexual, reproduction, health rights, water sanitation, and of course, women in policy positions. But just the top 3 issues were not the top 3 issues for the men. So, you know, again, it kind of shift back to us to say, us, we need to now say we need to support women. If I want access to education is to 49% of the population, to the women's voters, why shouldn't we have a woman in there who sees it the same way? I just saw on the group chat that there's another woman, Grace Scotland, who is running in Sino. But you mentioned organizations representation. Where are these organizations? And the one example that I always like to give every time I talk to women in politics in Liberia is Emily's List in the US. Emily's List, I am a proud supporter of Emily's List. Emily's List, for those of you who don't know, this was an organization that was founded in the early 80s in the US. A woman who decided, you know what, we need to raise money. I need to call all my friends, go in my basement. We need to raise money, and we need to get some women in in Congress, which is equivalent to the legislature. Okay, so she called all her friends. They got in the basement. They raised money, and the whole concept behind Emily's List is the fact that women need capital. When people are running for office, they actually need resources. And the number 1 resource is what is money. And Emily is the acronym for early money is like yeast. So the concept is let's raise money, and then we identify the women, and then we put all of our support behind this woman. And again, you know, the few women, 25 women in 1985, sat in the basement and decided these are our top issues that we're not seeing the Congress, which are majority men, we're not seeing them push. We want them to run for, say, quality education for girls, access education for girls. We want them to make sure that women are getting access to reproductive health, safe health environment. We want to make sure that women are also receiving equal pay for the same work that the guys are doing. So they actually sat down, they created a list with 25 women. They figured that other women must have been going through the same problem. They put their support behind women candidates who believe in that platform. So it was easier to hold that woman accountable if she didn't push, regardless of what party. Of course, over the years, Emily's List has become a pro-democratic organization because their platform aligns with the Democratic Party. And they have I want to say over 90% success rate, 80 or 90% success rate, meaning anybody they identify and put their support behind, she crossed the finish line. I think Hillary Clinton was one of the ones who didn't. But when we talk about the women's agenda, this is the concept of creating an agenda and pouring your support behind that agenda. But then the question also comes up and say, okay, if we agree on a common agenda and we identify some a candidate, how do we actually, are we able to hold these candidates accountable? So I guess what I should be asking is, what would be some of the challenges with ensuring that we push the agenda? I see 2 hands. So I will start. I don't know who had their hands up first, but we will start with a question from Veda.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Telematu. Thanks so much for starting the conversation. This election season, a lot of people don't know it, but the campaign has started. The election is in December and the campaign has started. And sadly, we just don't have that many women running this time yet again. So here's hoping that this will be the beginning of a cycle that will not end at least until the next election, 2023. So maybe we're starting early, we're not starting late. So I just wanted to make that statement. And once again, to thank everybody who is participating. But this is crucial, it's so important, especially here in Africa. If we don't have women in the driver's seat, at least helping to make these decisions, we're going to end up with some of the decisions that we've been ending up with that haven't really been going the way of women and children. So what do? What is the solution? A couple of years ago, I have my button. I wanted to show this button because sometimes we pursue initiatives that says vote on real issues, time to close the gap. And when you sent this email around about starting this conversation about women in politics, the last time there was a groundswell of women talking about helping other women and pushing issues that are friendly to women was in the last election, 2017. There was this huge rally, time to close the gap. We were closing the gap. Sadly, since then, the gap has widened, actually, in terms of the number of women in politics. We have even fewer women. Of course, you know, the vice president, former senator, she actually moved up, so we can't say that was a bad thing. But then when she vacated her slot in the Senate, it was filled by a man. Sadly, Senator Geraldine, when she died, her position was filled by a man, which brought us to just one woman in the Senate. But I can say that those three women, when they were working in the Senate, they worked together. When those women, there were only three of them, but the three of them made such a difference in the Senate. And it's sad to see Nyomli there by herself, you know, and they were in different parties. The three of them were from three different political parties, but there were so many issues that they came together and worked on. So that shows you how women work, you know, when they're really focused. So I'm saying all of this, and I know we don't have that much time. It's a short forum, but I'd like to put this on the table. Given the short time we have, the 2-3 years we have to the next election, because this election, the impact will be minuscule. I think we need to focus on the political party structures, the structures that currently exist. And sometimes I sound like a broken record, but anybody who has heard me talk about women and women's issues in Liberia know that my biggest pet peeve is this whole issue with the women's wing in the various political parties. I will keep talking about it until we get some kind of traction on this issue. There are a lot of men in the Senate and the House, but it doesn't mean that we don't have women in the various political parties. In fact, the women in the various political parties are the ones that are supporting the parties. They drive the parties in terms of cooking. We know food is a big thing in politics, fundraising, organizing. They do it on the backs of the women, and then they get elected, and the women are sitting in the women's wing. What is this whole thing about the women's? It's like my biggest pet peeve in Liberian politics, or maybe it's African politics. I moved back home 5 or 6 years ago, so maybe I'm still new. But I believe if we can get the women out of the ghetto, currently being called the women's wing, you will start seeing women in elected political office. Because what happens is that when you sit around the table in any of these parties, I'm not going to call any particular party, we have a lot of political parties. When you sit at the table, you have the men representing various aspects of the party, but all the women get represented by one woman who is the head of the women's wing. This is how we get marginalized. This is how they just put us to the side. Women are involved in politics in Liberia. Grace, the woman you mentioned in Sino, Grace, she is a perfect example. She has been in this, slogging it away. And I think she finally realized, it's time for me to move forward. And I believe she's going to win because she is a known entity in Sino. She is a strong woman. Okay, she is no shrinking violet. I believe she will win. Just like
let me.
All right.
Sorry, she's passionate about it, the women's wing. I think we've had this conversation before, but I want to kind of stop you for a second. Mmonbeydo has joined us. Mmonbeydo?
I saw her, so I know she's on.
I'm sorry I'm late. I saw 7 on the flyer, so I started to come in at 7.
We're recording. I can edit that part. But I'm gonna, introduce Mmonbeydo. She's a feminist, a lawyer, an educator, a former politician. She says she former, but we'll pull her right back in it. A public service scholar with years of experience as a gender advocate and has built a reputation as one of the most powerful voices for advocacy in women's rights. Not just one of the most powerful voices, but one of the youngest. That the young people there. So thank you, Mmonbeydo. Sorry for the confusion, but she's on here. So Mmonbeydo, I'm gonna give you a minute, just 1 minute, because I know you do so many great things. But 1 minute to just kind of tell us a little bit about your organization.
So the Organization for Women and Children was founded in 2013 and is an organization that works to increase women's participation in decision-making areas and also works to prevent sexual and gender-based violence and access to justice. So 2 main areas. So over the past few years, for the last 4 years, we've been building the capacity of women to contest public office, and that has culminated in the commemoration of our Raise the Bar program. So for 2 years now, we've been running the Raise the Bar for Women's Political Participation program, and we have built women's skills such in areas such as campaign planning and management, strategic planning, public speaking, in different areas of campaign management. How to know where your district and how to count the number of votes that you think you will have, those sort of things. And it's been really wonderful because most of the times we sit and we think that, the women need training and they need training. I gave you this example, and not to take away from the fact that those trainings are so important to women, but most of the times what they need, Salimantu, I just came when you were talking about the eminence list, is money. In the first place, we don't have money. The trust issues are there. Men have a higher level of trust when it comes to, galvanizing resources. And so some of the things that we teach them at this training is how to fundraise, how to network, and how to build the support that they need to build so that, they can be elected. Of course, the issue of electability is something also. So that is what we do at ORWOCH.
Thank you so much. So, we're sort of in the middle of the conversation, but Twede she had her hands up, so I will allow you to go ahead and either ask your question or make a comment.
Hi, thanks everybody. I'm gonna keep it's a bit loud where I am, sorry, because I didn't realize it's gonna be filmed. So I'm sitting in a coffee shop somewhere, so I apologize if this ruins your sound, Salamatu. I wanted to make maybe a couple comments and a question. And I think maybe the conversation has moved on a little bit, but I think it's still quite relevant for the actual question on board is how do we get women into leadership positions? And, look, someone, I think it was Simi who said we need to push as many people on in make them visible. And I think that that is the issue. Women are not visible, right? So if you are talking about how do we get women electable, let's start with why don't women vote for women? 59, half of the voting population is female. And there were over 200 candidates, I think, in the 2017 elections that were female. But it's not so much, I think the question is less of a shared agenda, because let's be very frank, it is going to be very difficult to unite all women around a single agenda, right? And I think that maybe trying to push that might be more of a hindrance than it is a benefit. What you really want to do is two things. You want to, one, do a little bit of what Veda was talking about, legislating. There are lots of legislation around that is trying to push what Simi called tokenism, right? I mean, there's a law on the books that says that they're going to create additional seats in the House of, I think in the legislature, and give those seats to female candidates. There's the one law I think that NEC is trying to push, which is pushing political parties to have 30% representation of female candidates. And I think that is sort of a top-down approach that we need to push for. And because I think Simi is right. I think tokenism is where we need to start before we can end up where we want to be. All right. And so I think if you're talking about how do we get women how do we get women to be visible, let's start with legislating it, and let's start with pushing for that kind of legislation, right? And then I want to use the example of Grace in Sino. Grace is running for office in Sino because the women of Sino asked her to run, right? So that goes back to the question of why women, when do women vote for other women, right? And it isn't necessarily because they share the same. It's not even necessarily because they share the same values, right? It's because Grace's organization is on the ground working with these women on a daily basis, right? And so in that community, in Sino, in those communities know, the women there know her, and she's visible. And that is where we need to start. I think that given the fact that even just, let's start with the way that where the opportunities for political engagement on the national landscape exist. They exist only in the House of Senate and only in the House of at the legislature. Sorry, I'm getting confused with the American. It happens to me all the time. And so those are the only places where positions are electable. Everything else is an appointment, right? So if you are not visible, you do not get appointed, right? And I know that it's not as simple as that there are more complicated issues involving appointments at the county level or mayoral appointments. I know that there are issues around that. But if you are talking about making change, I think that there are two things. One, push for legislation that mandates quotas. I also have a problem with tokenism, but I think it's absolutely necessary, because it also speaks to increasing visibility, and then also work with those candidates to make them visible. The fact of the matter is, with female candidates are never going to have, in general, as much funding to run campaigns as men do. That's always going to be a problem. So there has to be thinking outside of the box around how we can make them visible. And one of the things that we need to do is we need to start speaking to younger people. We need to start speaking to younger women. The population is 70% people under 35, right? Who is speaking to young people, right? I mean, that's where we need to start. It's one of the places we need to start. And when we're talking about dealing with young people, when we're talking about increasing visibility and speaking to young people, we need to also say, all right, let's start in high school. Let's start with pushing girls to be visible in high school. Let's start with pushing girls to go out for leadership positions. Let's start with pushing local community leadership positions, and that's how you build visibility. it's not going to be, the sort of deep-rooted kind of prejudice against women in political leadership is not something that's going to be solved in the next sort of eradicated, not solved, eradicated, let's say eradicated in the next 20 years. It's going to be a long, slow, drawn-out fight. And I think we need to start where we are. I'm just going to end it there, and I kind of have to go. So I'm happy that I got my comments and questions in before.
It's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
But now, when we start talking about the legislature, I want us to also look at Rwanda. Rwanda actually leads the world with women in national legislature. They have about 64% women representation. And why is that? It was actually through a law. Kagame actually, he passed a law. When they changed the constitution, he made sure that the parliament had reserved 30% seats for women. And so far, this has been working in that level. So is it really that, is that something we can push? I know the Vice President, Joah Howard, she was behind the bill that actually pushed for the reserve seats for not just women, but people with disability. Now, from my understanding, I think that the bill was not passed. They flat out said no, they don't want it, and they had to go back and rewrite it or reword it. So we'll come to you, Maida, but I think Sima had her hand up. So we'll go to Sima first, and then we'll come back to you regarding that legislature. But I know there was a legislature that was passed, backed by the current Vice President of Liberia, who is a woman. So Simi?
Okay, so just a couple of things I've noted here. And I think someone said that for the Grace Scholar that's running, it's not because people agreed with her, or not because all the women agree with, her ideals. I think that's one thing we all need to be careful of. We don't need to agree. So a lot of people expect that you don't disagree with another woman simply because she's a woman. We don't always have to be on the same page. That's why the whole agenda thing can be also kind of tricky, because we expect that we all have one united voice. We're all very different people with different concerns. I might be a woman, but women's concerns might not be what I'm bothered about, and it's no problem. So see, there's no one answer to this thing. Anyway, it's very multifaceted. There's a lot of complexities in this, but we need to be careful that we're not trying to get all women to agree about one thing. It will never happen, and trying to do that would just probably just drag things back. We can all, there are times where we can rally around a common point, but generally we'll never agree on things. Then I also have, so she said something about we need more, that we'll never have enough funding, and I agree with that. Because there's a lot that needs to happen in things outside politics before we can get there. We need to get education to be equal. So we need to have the out-of-school girls and stop being out-of-school girls. We need to have economic opportunities. We need to have equal access. There's all of that. We need to have more men picking up domestic chores so that women can also do more at the workplace. So there's a lot. So with all of those obstacles, it will take a while before we can have the same resources, money, that men have. So we need to do other things, and this is where we need to support and do like things as a tribe. Like you realize that. So I've been at meetings, and so it's easy for me because I don't have a kid. My husband is. We're regular. He's not going to say don't go anywhere. That will never ever enter the conversation. I'm out at 11 p.m. I'm driving. I'm doing stuff. But a lot of women can do that, and that because they have issues with their husband, their husbands will frown on, or because they have kids, and those are valid obstacles. So how do we get that? So these are things that are more than money, but that if we fix them, they can also solve a lot of things. How about we begin to bring up more support? Who says that a woman can show up at a meeting with like her crowd of supporters? Not a crowd, but people who are going to take care of her kid or something. Well, can we go to campaigns and there's like a small creche that has been set up to take care of kids there, because we needed to agree these are things we deal with as women and that affect our participation. So outside money to think of things like this, how do we begin to fix them? They probably just need people to come out and support. And then, more than legislation, So legislation is good and it opens the doors, but that's where other things need to come in. And you guys said, put the reorientation of women. She also said something like that. We need to go to school. I mean, I saw somebody running for a role and she's running for vice. And I asked her why. I'm like, why did you not run for the president? It was just a small organization. And she had no reason. Like, why on that? So currently there's an allied body. I have no interest in it. Actually, another body I belong to, but I'm running for president. I really don't want to be like, okay, I have to do this for the culture. I have to do this for the ladies. And it turned out that I was the only female running for that position. I'm almost praying that I don't win because I really do not want to, but I just had to show up and do it because I thought nobody would want to do it. And eventually they got back to me and said I was the only, because I didn't fill my form on time. So they actually called me. So I nominated myself. And they called me like, you don't finish filling your form. And they were like, oh, really, I'm the only person. So I went ahead and completed it. But so we need to get women to start thinking about that. Why are you going to run for vice just because what's that thing they say? Behind every successful man is one good. So these are just the thoughts that are coming to mind. And, so that's why I say, but we also need to bring women just come out. So women are the ones that will form the people at the base, who are the grassroots, that like your crowd of supporters that come and carry your baby for you, help you with school runs. And of course, there's a part of where men need to step up anyway. I think that's another conversation that needs to be had, especially on the home and domestic front, because I know how that really, really stops a lot of women. But let me not take up all the time. I'll just start here.
Simi, honestly, okay, so I'm going to read the top 5 factors that's deterring women from entering the political scene, okay? Number 5, the 5th one at the bottom, where we think is the major problem, is lack of finances. That's not the number 1 problem. You know what the number 1 problem was? Domestic responsibility.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you're absolutely right. That was the number 1 problem. It wasn't even the lack of finances. As we were talking, I think Dwede, when she was saying, the lack of finances, my mind immediately ran to the Liberian Marketing Association in Liberia. This is the Association of Market Women. This is more than likely the largest and most powerful organization in Liberia. Very silent, and these women have money. I will put it out there. They got money. They have money. And when they decide to put their support behind a candidate, that candidate wins. So I think finances is one thing, but the number 1 we have to think about is the domestic responsibility. And then, of course, the number 2 that followed was the prevailing culture attitudes regarding the role of women in society. The third reason was the lack of support from the family member, which is the confidence. So if you have all of those 3 problems, number 4, your confidence is down. And surprisingly for the men, it was extremely different. The number 1 reason that deter men from running is the lack of support from the electorate. And of course, their number 2 reason is the lack of finances. And 3, of course, the lack of support for political parties. So we have 2 completely different issues. And again, we really need to look at what is our problem and then try to adjust. I see some hands up. I think, Maureen, you had your hand up. So we'll go to you.
Yeah, I just want to follow up to something that's what he said. The work in terms of empowering young people, I think has already started on some level. The Young Political Leadership School, we need to pay attention to that. There are some, that's the one that's run by Eddie Jawolo from NAMOT. Need to pay attention to that. That's some really strong women, young women are coming out of there. But how do you empower them to think that, you know what, I can run for the House of Representatives. If I live in Sincor and that's my district, What am I doing in my district? How do I start? Because when you think about this woman in this Grace in Sino, she started doing stuff in her community. Maybe that's why the women rallied around her for that. So while we're grooming the young people, among the women 35 and up, who are we looking at that we can say, let's help create that critical mass? Because I don't think we're targeting people, you know, and we need to start doing that, because if we don't do that, and even if the person says they're not interested, so okay, do you know anybody else? Or why aren't you interested? And we need a sustained engagement on this issue, because I think we only talk about it during election time. Now we have 3 years, okay, after this December election, we're going to have 3 more years to the next election, the next presidential election. What are we going to be doing for the next 3 years? How are we preparing for the next 3 years? And that's the kind of conversation that we should be having right now. And the reason why, and we need to also look at the Liberian context. I agree with tokenism on some level. I agree. I wish this legislation that has been lingering, and it's been the men that have been fighting against it. I think we need to keep raising that, talking about a sustained engagement. Since that thing was kicked out, I haven't heard about it again. We need to get back. We need to get it back on the agenda. And we also.
I mean, I'm sorry. What did you say? What sustained engagement? Is that what are you talking about, the affirmative action bill?
Yeah, we need sustained engagement on it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll speak when you're done. I'm sorry.
And we also need to identify male allies. I mean, UN Women, you know, has a really good program where they have male champions, you know, for women's political participation. We need to keep those men engaged, you know, and we need to find more allies like that. And we need to, and when we shouldn't just, when people are bad mouthing Madam Sirleaf in terms of what she did for women, this and that, we shouldn't always accept it. We should challenge people on that. Because if that's the case, then we should start talking about all the men who didn't do this, who didn't do that, because you cannot use her as the standard for all women, you know, that she was the answer. So we're not going that route anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, we can't do that.
Joshua?
Salamatu.
Good evening. Good evening,
Yeah,
everyone.
Joshua. Did I say your name?
My name is Nashwa Issa'a from Egypt.
Okay. So I think you had a comment or question.
No, just a comment. I want to add it in our agenda about a handicapped woman. When a woman have a disease, have anything, make her can't walk, can't go, can't buy anything. They be a president in her house. They can't do anything. So we want to help every woman around the world to be a reality, to learn how to education, how to be a positive, how to be a role in her society, how to be in election. Here in Egypt, a handicapped woman be in election, be in many minister, be in many things. But I want this be around the world, in many countries in Africa, in Arab world. Why woman, when she have a disease, when she be older, be in home, be in a wheelchair? No, she have a rule. She have many things to do. She have to prove herself, to have prove her society, her idea. Many things she should to do. Not kill her, but she's alive. Why to be dead? No, you have to be alive. You have to be do many things in your wheelchair. You know, I am a handicapped woman. I can't walk. Not normal, but I try to prove myself. I try to have many education in many college, have a master, I have many things to prove not to myself. No, I want to prove to every woman you have to do anything. You have to learn. You have to be in any position, in anything. You have to be a good woman. You have to prove. You have to be a leadership. Your children in society. not handicapped, not disease, not anything in her body, in her idea. No, they want her to do what she to do something out box, not original. No, we have to do many things out box to prove ourselves, not rule.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of you. I was happy. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. You know,
Nice.
I tell people, I'm like, the men know that the women can lead. They know.
Yeah.
I want to use my language. I am not good in English, very good, but I try to be give my idea to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All
That
right.
was
You know, had her hands up as well.
hello.
Yes, madam.
Okay, so Simi mentioned the laws that somebody mentioned that we have to make tougher laws. I agree, but what are we doing about the available laws that we have on the books now? We have Section 4.5B and C all the way to D of the new elections law. Even though it is not strong, endeavor to ensure. How are we endeavoring to ensure? How are political parties endeavoring to ensure? Now we are having the parties primary. Who's monitoring those primaries to ensure that women are being elected on the, or that women constitute 30% of those lists? Yes. NPP were in Buchanan the last time. CDC has just announced that they are going on their party primaries. And where we are now, we are in the midst of COVID-19. Women's organizations are focusing on response and recovery. Yeah. You are just beginning this conversation. Other people are just waking up to the conversation, but December is right here. Yeah. So it all boils down to the preparation, as we said. And what do women want? It's so good that you think that survey, Salimatu. It's so many. It all begins with participation. It all begins with participation. Yes. Sitting down at the table and making the relevant decisions with the men. They're not going to pass the affirmative action bill. You people want all they sit in the house. They're scared. And that is part of the reason I agree with Maureen Sieh. What Madam said, is so demonized. They're scared. Just the last time the woman went to Unity Party, you saw the ruckus that it created. What are you coming to do here? The woman said, my party called me, so I have to be here. You mean you didn't have to meet them at your house? They're scared of her. Because I can tell you, President Tubman was one of the biggest political men in this country. Ellie is just like that. You can't beat her at her game. And that is what makes them scared, afraid. Men are afraid of women who will beat them at their game. And I think this time around, one of the key things is to do consultation from the communities. I mean, we always asking the experts. We always bringing women on board who are knowledgeable in this aspect or in that aspect. But I think now we have to go back to the communities. I remember when Josephine Francis was contesting for the Senate and we were going around. We went into the market. I think I still have that clip. That market woman was so angry. She started to say, give me money, and this and that, and that and this. And she began to express and vent her anger. So I think we need to go from community to community, asking these women, what do you think we need to do to get more women elected? Let's take them now as our consultant. Instead of being the consultant and doing all these studies, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and let them own this movement. I think, but it's going to take a lot of, mobilization to do that. But we need to go back into the communities. I agree that we need to move to the schools. We need to target young women who are going to be strong gender activists, who are going to be transformational leaders. The last time we just trained almost 20 girls to be transformational leaders. Those are going to help, create visibility in terms of social media to some of those women on our political resource center. So you know, the troubles are many, but I think it all boils down to consultations. And I think that it's still time to do these consultations. We need to go back to the community. We need to ask those women, what do you think we need to do now? Let them know the statistics. Let them know why it is important. I think they know, but they think they have been harping into this message of Madam Salif didn't do anything for women. You know, the single woman is
I'm still on the call.
story. So now we have to go back and tell them, no, these are the facts and you are the experts. So you have to tell us and then you can own it. I think that is what we need to do going forward.
And Mmonbeydo, I always also say what your organization is doing. Your organization more than likely to play a key role in some of the suggestions that we're hearing, you know, we need to make sure, you know, more women have visibility. We need to make sure that we're targeting not just the young people, but we're going into the communities and we're speaking with these women, just asking them, you know, what are some of the issues? Why are you not running? Maybe just talking to them from the community level up. And of course, the point about the legislature pushing that agenda. And a lot of the suggestions that we're giving, we know these are long term. But I guess my personal frustration is always we talk about the challenges, and then for some reason we get stuck in that the challenges, rather than say, okay, we identify the challenges, we suggested these things. How do we make it happen now? I do want to point out this was pre-COVID this year when about 4 political parties, all oppositions, got together and decided they were going to collaborate. Thank you, Jesus, because for those of you who don't know, when it's election, we have about 20 plus political parties, and I'm probably being nice when I say 20. It's more than likely more than that. We have all of these political parties because it's so easy to start a political party in Liberia. So we have all these many political parties with 4 million people, and I think it's about half of those people are registered voters, right? So you you just have all of these people who split and votes, the resources is in there, but to have 4 of the top political parties come together and say, you know what, we're going to consolidate was truly a beautiful thing to see, you know, with our democracy anyway. And with that, I also had the opportunity to moderate one of their first events, which was focused on the women. Again, you know, what were the challenges? And we had some young political leaders there, females, talking about the same challenges that we address, and they also proposed how we can help them. So when I get into the challenges and some of the issues they face, that's probably another 2-hour show. But we know our democracy is now starting to see that, to see, you know, political parties coming together, to see us talking about it a little bit more. I think, you know, the conversation needs to just take maybe like 2 more steps further. December is a short time, but I still think it's such a long time for us to say, you know what, yeah, we're going to push some of the women, you know, we will support 30 women.
Salamatu, please, let me just jump in here real quickly. I promise I won't speak for long. Oh, shucks. My phone died. Damn it. And my phone just died.
Okay, so while Veda is figuring her phone, we're going to try to wrap this up. I think we've been on here a little longer than we expected. It's an important conversation for everybody here. I really wanted to hear a little bit more about the political scene in Nigeria as far as women participation in your parliament. So if you can maybe just kind of give us a picture of it, Simi, before we go to last words, just what does that look like? Because you know Nigeria is the China of us in the ECOWAS.
Please, I think Nigeria is one of the countries doing, we have like the worst rates for women's participation globally, and even in Africa, we're nowhere even near the middle. First, we've never had a female governor. We've only had a handful of female deputy governors in the National Assembly. So we have 348 House of Representatives. 12 of those are women. Only 12. That's like 3%. At the time before that, it was 14 out of 341. Now it's 12 out of 348. For our Senate, we have 1 out of 109. 1 woman out of 109. But did I say, yeah. I'm sorry. I meant 7. 7 out of 109. 7. Yeah, so I think it was 8 before then, and now we're just 7. So it's terrible. Even down to the local levels, women's participation is just low. And for me, so that, and even at the parties, at the ward levels, I've been to one of my ward meetings, and first, there are barely any women there. So maybe out of like 30 people in the meeting, you have like 5 or 7 women. And even the women there, they don't talk, they don't do anything. These are the people that make decisions and that's how the decisions graduate, yeah? So the decisions happen at the ward level, because it's people at the ward level that become delegates to vote for those who choose the people that run for office. That's how it goes. So if women are not even there at those levels, how is it supposed to happen? So it's very bleak, but thankfully there are a number of young women who are coming up and trying to do things. Yeah, me for example, but it's hard because it's like we have all the odds. We have the 2 odds. You're young and then you're female. Yeah. Like you're fighting the battle on 2 fronts. So it's pretty hard, but I'm hopeful because I see things changing. But right now, it's just Nigeria is doing very poorly at it. Very, very poor, very poorly.
It's so sad. Sometimes I sit and I say, we praise places like Rwanda. And I'm like, why can't we copy some of the good things that we're praising them for and implement it in our community? We see that they went ahead and did it from the presidential level, from the Constitution. They went ahead and inserted that in there, that there must be 30% reserved seats for women. It hasn't harmed the country. If anything, there's a lot of good things can be attributed because of that. So be it. We even looking at our current crisis right now, the pandemic, as well as what happened, 6 years ago, women leaders addressing some of these issues, these health issues. So I guess, again, we just kind of go back to that visibility.
Plug it up for me, please.
The women, we need to push more of our mothers, our friends, our daughters into that space. We need to give them visibility. We need to give them that support. And once we put them there, regardless of the tokenism, because I'm one of the people who, I have a different opinion about some tokenism, but then I get so frustrated when I see what's happening there with most of the men. And I'm like, but you know what? Why don't we go ahead and push more of the women in there, and then we work our way up and say, okay, we will work with you, we will provide the support for whatever you need. But I know we're running out of time.
Salamatu, I'm back.
Okay, Veda, we'll give you like 30 seconds what you want to say.
Okay. Real quickly, what I was going to say is that you talked about challenges. We want to talk about solutions, and I know a lot of people would think this is also radical, but in the model of Emily's list that you mentioned, a few women got together and just took action. I think sometimes we as women, because we're so used to working with consensus and we want to bring everybody in under the big tent, before something actually happens, nothing will happen. Or if it happens, it falls apart. So I would like to suggest that this idea that you put on the table, which I think, I just think it's brilliant. I don't see why we can't pursue it.
We need a group of women who are really focused, passionate. We need some good fundraisers. We need people who are committed. And we just say, okay, this is what's going to happen. Emily's List was starting in 85. Look how long it took them to really gain traction. This is not an overnight thing, but we got to start somewhere, right? So I say, let's move forward. Whoever wants to join can join, okay? The other thing I want to say about this whole affirmative action bill is that I don't want the thinking out there to be that, you know, Senator Joah Howard Taylor brought a bill to the floor and it was dashed down. First of all, she worked through two versions of it. She brought it, it didn't go in that one legislature. I think it was the 53rd or the 54th, because every time there's a new election or whatever, they reconstitute after 2 or 3 years. And in its last version, it was passed in the Senate, which is significant. There were only 3 women in the Senate at the time, okay? There were only 3 women in the Senate, and a majority of men voted for the affirmative action bill. It passed in the Senate. It died in the House. It died in the House because the women in the House at the time, many of them weren't even for the bill. They weren't pulling for the bill. You understand? So I'm saying all of that to say that it's not necessarily the men who will always squash it, and you assume that, okay, you can't get traction or whatever. There's a way to go about building consensus in the legislature. There's a way to do it. And those 3 women have been there for a long time. They had seniority, they had experience, expertise, and they were able to get their colleagues on board to pass that bill in the Senate. The other thing is, if we are going back to the grassroots, we shouldn't just be asking the people what they think. We need to be finding out specifically who they think should run. So instead of coming and like helicopter dropping people into the various constituencies and saying, women, this is your candidate, vote for her. You go to the women, you meet with the women, you find out who they're looking at, and it will excite them to know that one of them is now running. To me, that's how you build a campaign, literally from the grassroots up. So that's my suggestion in terms of trying to identify women in the various constituencies. Find local women. As Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. Thank you.
All right, so thank you. I know, yeah, we went way beyond time, but that's good because it's a fruitful conversation. So before we wrap up, just want to give Simi a chance for final words, and then we'll go to Maureen, and then we'll go to Mmonbeydo. Simi,
okay, it's been a lovely discussion. I'm really glad about this. I think my final words would be, let's also stop looking at the high level roles. So when people talk about women's participation in politics, they're talking about, like, for example, now, if I'm talking about Nigeria, I'm talking about how there's just 7 women in the Senate out of 109 or 14 out of all of that. But a lot of the time, we tend to forget the roles that are at the lower rungs of the ladder. Mm-hmm. What happened to ward councillors? What happened to local government chairmen? I don't know what the equivalent of those roles or those offices in Liberia. But so those are places where we also need women, because eventually when decisions are made at the top, we need people at the grassroots, at the state, at the local government areas to implement. If we don't have people who are like us, who support, who think like we do, how are those things going to get implemented? That's one of the reasons why legislation is passed and states don't implement it for years and years and all that, because we don't have the same set of people or similar people at this lower level. So I said, let's also begin to look at those roles, and eventually it's from there that we'll grow. So as we'll grow, we'll grow. Today you're a ward councillor. The next time around, who knows, you're president. So it's also a pattern. Just want us to remember that those places are also important that we focus on. And right. Long journey. We have a very long journey ahead of us. But we can.
Yes, indeed. Maureen?
Well, I just want to say thank you for starting this conversation. I think it was focused, and I hope that we can take this to another level. I agree that we should go to the grassroots women, because every time I have interaction with the rural women, I always ask them, why aren't you running for office? And the first thing they would say, Salamatu, they would say money. And I said, think about how successful you are when you're raising money for things in the community. The thing is, you have to help people change their focus. So you were raising money to bury somebody the other day, and you probably raised about 10,000 LD or more than that. All right, can you say we will look amongst ourselves, which one of us can run?
Yes.
How can we raise money to support that person? Because if money, sometimes, they say if you build it, they will come. Okay,
Yeah.
find the people. And let's see how we can rally behind that person with all our financial resources, logistical resources, and everything to make sure that that person wins. And I also think we need to have some level of engagement with these political parties. Because everybody has not had it's my understanding, I don't think the primary season is over. I don't think it's late. I don't think it's over because they haven't decided Bond County yet. I don't think. They haven't really settled have they settled on Nimba yet? I don't think so. They settled on Grand Bassa, but it's not too late. If there are women in this race, we need to talk to that CPP, or we let that person run as an independent candidate, and we put some financial weight behind that person. Yeah. Because we need to start doing that. Simply because the CPP or Unity Party says this is our male candidate doesn't necessarily mean that the people have to support that person. There's nothing wrong with people rallying behind Edith Gunglo, even though she may not be the favorite of whatever party there is, or running behind, rallying behind Dorothy. Instead of saying, because Unity Party and this other person has elected, that says Prince Moy and Henry Yala are supposed to be the leading candidates, rally behind the women who have stepped up, because it takes a lot to step up.
Mm-hmm.
And we have some good candidates. We have some really good female candidates. So let get them in the race.
All right, Mmonbeydo.